One question which I see a lot of people asking is, what type of food is best to feed my dog? And that's a really valuable question to be asking. Invariably, though, what you get a lot of responses about says, feed brand X, feed brand Y, feed brand Z, or some rules which somebody has decided to come up with that says this is what you need to have a good dog food. So stay away from all grains and all this and all that, and make sure that highest protein is the best for dogs and all this kind of stuff. Now the problem with a lot of this is there's not a whole lot backing it up. It's nice to have a set of rules that you can apply to every dog and say, oh yeah, that'll get me to the best food. Unfortunately, life just doesn't work that way. There are a lot of dogs who do well on some of the worst brands of food out there, that you would see, and there's some which you'll feed them the highest quality diet you can find, and they don't do very well. So it really leaves you in a little bit of a quandary as far as what to recommend to people when they ask you about foods. I want to preface this as well by saying, you hear a lot on the internet about, vets don't get proper training in nutrition and it's all provided by the pet food companies, and it comes off as a bit of a massive conspiracy theory in the way some people tell it. In reality, that's just not the way it is. I have multiple courses in nutrition behind me. Yes, I have spoken to people at pet food companies and multiple pet food companies and gotten their input on it. I don't have a problem with that. When you think about it, if you were an expert on nutrition, where would you go to work? Are you going to go work for the pet food store? Is that where your PhDs in nutrition are going to end up? No, of course not. Most of them are going to go and they're going to work at a pet food company or a feed mill or whatever. They're going to go to these kinds of places because that's where they get paid. Now, my job as a future veterinarian is to take the information which they give to me and turn it in and remove the bias. Obviously, what they give us is biased information. I have to apply my scientific training to it to come to you and say, hey, this is what we really know. This is this is what I can tell you and what I can be sure of. Now, nutrition is a very complicated field, and it's a field where a lot of people are very passionate about what they believe. Now, given this, a lot of vets will kind of feign ignorance when it comes to nutrition. It's not that they don't know about nutrition in a lot of cases. I'm not saying there aren't vets out there who don't know about nutrition, but I'd be a lot more tempted to believe the people that they, rather than they don't know about it, they're not comfortable talking to you about it. Because if you tell them something that, if I go and tell you, well, you really shouldn't be doing this, and some guy on the internet says, oh, this is a great idea, it puts me in conflict with that. And really, that's not where a lot of vets want to be. So quite often, vets do know, but they're not really comfortable discussing it with people because you can lose clients that way fairly easily. So how do I go about choosing a food? One of the key aspects when choosing a food is to evaluate, does it work for the dog? Does it, is the dog doing well in the food? I mean, I see people all the time say, oh yeah, my dog's doing great on this food, but I want to change his food. Well, if your dog's doing well, is a good weight, has good skin, good, nice coat, good energy level, all these kinds of things, there's no reason to change out what you're feeding him. Even if it doesn't agree with those rules that you see on the internet that says, that you shouldn't be feeding it. Because frankly, there's not a lot of evidence behind those rules. So what I do when I'm choosing a food is I will take a food that's within my price range, and there's going to be quite a number of those, but there's something, it does narrow it down a bit. I don't want to pick the cheapest food on the market, but also chances are not the most expensive food on the market. Find one that's that's a price you're willing to pay, and try feeding it for a month. and it's important to feed it for that month. Don't feed it for a week and go, well, he doesn't like that food, let's go try something else. Feed the food for a month, and then evaluate the dog. If the dog is doing better on that food, stick with it. If he's not doing better on that food, go back to the one you were feeding before. Feed that for a month, and then try something else. Assuming that there's not some really specific reason why you shouldn't be feeding the old food. There are other ways that you can narrow down your choices a little bit. One of the things which kind of turns me off about a food is any unnamed protein sources that are part of it. So these are things you'll read on the label, say meat meal or meat byproducts, or just generally meat. Now the problem I have with that is you really don't know what you're feeding your dog. So if you're feeding your dog a food that contains meat meal, that could change from bag to bag, and if you have a dog that might be prone to some allergies or whatever, you're not going to get it under control feeding a food like that. So make sure, first thing that you should look for when you're looking at a food bag is that the protein source is named, right? So you want something, beef, lamb, chicken, all that kind of stuff. You want to know what's there, right? So, and then if you have a problem with a particular food, then try a different food if that doesn't work. That brings me to another point about byproducts. That's one of the things that you see all the time, people commenting on is, don't feed a food that contains any byproducts. Well, frankly, that's ridiculous. There are a lot of very good foods, and they contain byproducts. So what is a byproduct? A byproduct quite simply means anything which was produced that is not the primary product, okay? So if I'm putting together, your roast chickens in the store, that's, the primary product is the roast chicken. Well, there's still a lot of stuff that we don't eat as humans that is perfectly good food and is a good nutrient source. It's like chicken livers and intestinal tracts. All that stuff is actually good nutrient value. But it's not palatable to humans. So it's a byproduct, as long as the food is balanced and is produced under controlled circumstances, that's okay. Now, there is a wide variation in what byproducts are. Like, I'm a lot less happy with a byproduct I see in a, super cheap food versus a more expensive food, because you can do a lot of things to, chicken byproduct meal in order to make it more acceptable to feed. Unfortunately, they don't tell you what they've done to it on the label, so that makes it kind of difficult. There are other issues in terms of, I stay away from foods which look like they're trying to play the label game to me, that try to, make out that they are something that they're not. If I look at a label and I see chicken on there, if it's a kibbled food, I stay the heck away from that as much as I can, for the simple reason that if they say chicken on there as opposed to chicken meal, means that it's on the list by weight, including all the water that's in it. So if I take away the water, that is going to fall down the list. Now, of course, in the kibble, the water's not there. You've removed that from it. So you have no idea where that is, and it's almost like they're trying to fool you. So it's not an absolute reason not to go for food, but it's certainly a reason to be a little bit more wary of the food. They're trying to play you a little bit, so I don't like that. The other one people say is, stay away from, grains, and dogs are carnivores and that kind of thing. There are foods which, probably do contain too much grains, but it's not an absolute reason to stay away from a food. If you process them correctly, you can have quite a high nutrient value out of them, and it's a good, cheap protein source that, dogs do fairly well on. Generally speaking, if you've got a problem with the diet as far as allergies goes, it's not the corn in there or whatever that you see on the net. It's going to be the protein source. Well, that about concludes this video. Otherwise, I won't be able to upload it. So hopefully that's been useful to you, and I'll see you again.